The smell of smoke still clung to Hannah Blackburn's hair when she collapsed beside the remains of her family's homestead, her tears carving clean streaks through the soot that covered her face. Colorado Territory, 1871, a time when a woman alone had few options and even fewer friends. The fire had taken everything: her parents, their modest ranch, and any hope for her future. Hannah wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders as the early autumn wind cut through the thin fabric of her dress. She had nowhere to go. The nearest town, Silver Creek, was a half-day's walk, and she knew no one there well enough to impose. Still, with night approaching and temperatures dropping, she had no choice. By the time Hannah staggered into Silver Creek, darkness had fallen. Her legs trembled with exhaustion, her throat burned with thirst, and her stomach gnawed with hunger. The saloon was the only establishment still alive with light and noise. Desperation drove her toward it. When she pushed through the swinging doors, the usual cacophony of piano music, laughter, and clinking glasses momentarily ceased. All eyes turned to the bedraggled woman with soot-stained clothing and wild, ash-filled hair. Lord Almighty, what crawled in here? A man's voice called out, breaking the silence. Hannah flinched but squared her shoulders. "I need work," she announced, her voice stronger than she felt. "My family's ranch burned down yesterday. I can cook, clean, so look at her. She's been sleeping in the ashes." Another voice jeered. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone threw a peanut shell at her. "We don't need no ash girl here," the barkeeper said, his face a mask of disgust. "This is a respectable establishment." More laughter followed this pronouncement, considering the saloon was anything but respectable. "Please," Hannah tried again, blinking back tears. "I just need enough money for a meal and she's mine." The deep voice cut through the mockery. The crowd parted as a tall figure moved forward from a corner table. Hannah found herself looking up at a man whose presence seemed to command the room. His face was partially shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat, but she could see a strong jaw dusted with stubble and eyes the color of a summer storm. He moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to handling himself in difficult situations. His clothes were trail-worn but clean denim pants, a faded blue shirt, and a leather vest. The gun belt at his hip looked well used. "What did you say, Kent?" the barkeeper asked, his tone suddenly respectful. "I said she's mine," the man Kent repeated, stepping beside Hannah. "My wife. Been looking for her since our place burned down." He turned to Hannah, his expression softening. "Found you at last, darling." Hannah opened her mouth to protest the lie but caught the warning in his eyes. "Play along," they seemed to say. "You married this filthy creature." Someone called out incredulously. Kent's hand found hers, strong fingers wrapping around her smaller ones. "Any man who has a problem with my wife has a problem with me," he said, his voice deceptively calm. His free hand rested casually on his holstered pistol. The room fell silent. "Kent Galloway," the barkeeper said slowly. "Didn't know you had a wife." "Didn't know I needed your approval, Ed," Kent replied evenly. He turned to Hannah. "Let's go, honey. You look exhausted." Still holding her hand, he guided her back through the swinging doors and out into the night. Once they were several buildings away, Hannah pulled her hand free. "Why did you do that?" she demanded, though her voice lacked any real heat. She was too grateful for the rescue to be truly angry. Kent Galloway studied her for a moment before answering. "No decent man would leave a woman to be treated like that." He gestured toward a small hotel at the end of the street. "I have a room there. You can clean up, get some rest." Hannah took a step back. "Sir, if you think I'm going to—" "Nothing improper," he interrupted. "I'll sleep in the chair, or outside your door if that makes you more comfortable. But you need somewhere safe for the night." "Why should I trust you?" "Because I'm offering help with no strings attached," he said simply, "and because you don't have many other options right now." Hannah couldn't argue with that logic. Her alternatives were sleeping in an alley or returning to the burnt remains of her home. Neither appealed. "All right," she agreed reluctantly. "But just for tonight." Kent nodded. "Just for tonight." The hotel room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a wooden chair. True to his word, Kent gathered some spare clothing from his saddlebag and stepped out while Hannah washed away the soot and ash as best she could with the basin of water. She changed into the shirt he'd lent her, which hung to her knees like a nightgown. Her own dress was ruined beyond repair. When Kent returned, he carried a tray with bread, cheese, and 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Thought you might be hungry," he said, setting it down on the small table. Hannah hadn't realized how famished she was until the aroma of food reached her. She ate quickly, trying to maintain some semblance of manners despite her desperate hunger. "The fire," Kent said after a while. "What happened?" Hannah swallowed hard. "Lightning strike. It spread so fast." She stared into her coffee cup. "My parents, they were inside. I was in the barn, tending to a sick calf." "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "Why are you helping me, Mr. Galloway?" Kent leaned back in his chair. "When I was 16, my family's farm in Kansas was raided. Came home to find everything gone. My parents, my little sister, our home. A stranger took me in, gave me work, kept me from starving or turning outlaw." He shrugged. "Sometimes a person just needs someone to extend a hand. And that's all this is, repaying an old debt." He held her gaze for a long moment. "Get some sleep, Miss Blackburn, Hannah Blackburn." "Miss Blackburn, we'll figure out your next steps in the morning." True to his word, Kent took the chair, insisting Hannah take the bed. Despite her exhaustion, she lay awake for some time, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest as he dozed in what had to be an uncomfortable position. Who was this man who had come to her rescue so unexpectedly? Morning brought clarity and embarrassment. In the harsh light of day, Hannah was acutely aware of her predicament, alone, destitute, and dependent on the kindness of a stranger. "I can't impose on you any further," she said as Kent returned with breakfast. "I'll find work in town." After yesterday's reception, Kent raised an eyebrow. "Silver Creek might not be your best option. I'm heading to Cottonwood Springs, 2 days' ride from here. My friend runs the general store there. He mentioned needing help." "You'd take me all that way, going there anyway," Kent said with a shrug. "You're welcome to ride along." Hannah weighed her options. She had nothing left in Silver Creek, and the prospect of traveling alone was daunting. "All right," she agreed, "but I'll repay you for this help." Kent smiled, for the first time a surprisingly gentle expression on his weathered face. "We'll start with getting you some proper clothes. Can't have you riding across Colorado territory in my spare shirt." An hour later, dressed in a simple but clean dress and sturdy boots purchased from the general store, Hannah waited outside the livery stable while Kent saddled his horse. "Ever ridden double before?" he asked as he let out a sturdy chestnut gelding. Hannah nodded. "I grew up on a ranch, Mr. Galloway." "Kent," he corrected, helping her mount before swinging up behind her. The first day's journey passed in relative silence. Hannah was acutely aware of Kent's presence, the solid warmth of his chest against her back, the strength in his arms as he held the reins on either side of her. By evening, when they made camp beside a small creek, she found herself feeling safer than she had any right to expect. As Kent built a fire, Hannah gathered water from the creek. "You never said what takes you to Cottonwood Springs," she ventured. Kent arranged kindling carefully. "I do odd jobs, guide, tracker, sometimes help the law when they need an extra gun. A bounty hunter, not exactly." The fire caught and he sat back on his heels. "I find people who are lost, mostly. Reunite families, help folks who have been separated find each other again. That's unexpectedly kind work. Kent's mouth quirked. Don't spread that around, bad for my reputation. Hannah found herself smiling for the first time since the fire. Your secret's safe with me. That night, lying beneath the vast canopy of stars with Kent's coat draped over her for warmth, Hannah listened to the soft sounds of his breathing nearby. Strange how quickly a person could come to trust another when circumstances threw them together. The second day of travel brought them through increasingly rugged terrain. Kent pointed out landmarks, naming distant peaks and valleys with the familiarity of someone who had traversed this land many times. How long have you been out west? Hannah asked. 10 years now. Came out after the war. You fought? Kent nodded but didn't elaborate. Like many veterans, he seemed disinclined to discuss those years. And you? Your family long in Colorado? 5 years, Hannah replied. My father dreamed of having his own ranch. We were just starting to make it work. Her voice caught. Now it's all gone. Kent was quiet for a moment. Not everything, he said finally. You're still here. That's something. By mid-afternoon, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. Kent urged the horse to a faster pace, but the storm caught them regardless, unleashing a torrent of rain that soaked them within minutes. There's a line shack about a mile ahead, Kent shouted over the downpour. Used by cattle outfits during roundup season. The abandoned cabin was little more than 4 walls and a roof, but it was dry. Kent quickly started a fire in the small stone hearth while Hannah wrung water from her skirts. Your dress will never dry if you keep it on, Kent observed practically, turning his back to give her privacy. Wrap yourself in that blanket from my saddlebag. I'll hang your clothes by the fire. Hannah hesitated, then did as he suggested, modesty warring with practicality. The blanket was thick and warm, and she huddled near the fire as Kent hung their sodden clothing on a line strung across the cabin. Storm might last all night, he said, sitting across from her in his undergarments, seemingly unself-conscious. Good thing we found shelter. As evening settled in, the cabin grew cozy. Kent produced jerky and hardtack from his saddlebag, and they ate in companionable silence. Tell me about your family, Hannah said eventually. Kent's expression grew distant. Not much to tell, simple farm folk. Pa fought in the Mexican War, came back with stories that made Kansas sound boring. Ma was the strongest woman I ever knew, could plow a field as well as any man, then come in and make a pie that would make you weep. They sound wonderful. They were. He poked at the fire. What about yours? Hannah drew the blanket tighter. My father was a dreamer, always seeing possibilities where others saw obstacles. Mother was more practical, kept his feet on the ground. They balanced each other. Sounds like a good match. It was. They truly loved each other. Hannah stared into the flames. I always hoped to find that kind of love someday. Kent's eyes met hers across the fire, and something unspoken passed between them, a moment of understanding, of shared loneliness. It's out there, he said softly. The storm raged through the night, wind howling around the cabin's corners. Hannah eventually dozed off, lulled by the rain and the warmth of the fire. She awoke once to find Kent draping another blanket over her, his touch gentle, his expression unreadable in the firelight. Morning brought clear skies and damp clothes that were at least wearable. They set out early, both of them quieter than before, as if the intimacy of the previous night had created a new awareness between them. Cottonwood Springs appeared by mid-afternoon, a thriving town nestled in a valley, considerably larger than Silver Creek. Hannah felt a flutter of anxiety as they rode down the main street. What if Kent's friend didn't need help after all? What would she do then? The general store stood on the corner of the main intersection, a large, well-maintained building with a wide porch. A bell jangled as they entered, and a portly man with a magnificent mustache looked up from behind the counter. "Kent Galloway, as I live and breathe," he exclaimed, coming around to pump Kent's hand enthusiastically. "Right on time, as usual." "Howard, this is Miss Hannah Blackburn," Kent said. "Hannah, Howard Prescott, oldest friend and worst poker player west of the Mississippi." Howard laughed heartily. "Slander and lies. Miss Blackburn, a pleasure." His jovial expression sobered as Kent quietly explained Hannah's situation. "My dear girl, how terrible. Of course there's a position for you here. My wife has been after me to hire help for months." Relief washed over Hannah. "Thank you, Mr. Prescott. I'm a hard worker." "I've no doubt. Any friend of Kent's is welcome here." Howard turned to Kent. "You staying a while this time?" Kent hesitated, glancing at Hannah. "Got business to attend to, but I'll be back through in a couple of weeks." Hannah felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. She had grown accustomed to his presence in a remarkably short time. Howard's wife, Betsy, was as warm and welcoming as her husband. She showed Hannah to a small but comfortable room above the store and helped her settle in. By evening, Hannah had bathed, changed into clothes Betsy had kindly provided, and begun learning the store's inventory. When it came time for Kent to leave, Hannah walked him to where his horse was tethered outside. "I can't thank you enough," she said. "You've saved me in more ways than one." Kent adjusted his saddle straps, not meeting her eyes. "You'd have managed, perhaps, but I'm glad I didn't have to." Hannah hesitated, then impulsively reached up to kiss his cheek. "Be safe, Kent Galloway." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, warmth, and perhaps regret. "Take care of yourself, Hannah Blackburn." He mounted his horse, tipped his hat, and rode away without looking back. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Hannah proved herself invaluable at the store, quickly learning the business and charming the customers with her quiet efficiency. Betsy and Howard treated her like family, and for the first time since the fire, Hannah began to feel as though she might have a future after all. But thoughts of Kent remained. She found herself watching the door whenever the bell jangled, hoping to see his tall figure step through. She told herself it was merely gratitude she felt, nothing more. 16 days after Kent's departure, a commotion in the street drew Hannah to the store's front window. A group of riders had entered town, leading a string of horses. At their center rode Kent, his expression grim. Hannah rushed outside as the group stopped in front of the sheriff's office. Kent dismounted stiffly, and she noticed with alarm that his shirt was stained with blood along one sleeve. "Kent," she called out. He turned, his face lighting up momentarily before he schooled his features. "Hannah." "You're hurt," she said, approaching. "Just a graze." He nodded toward the men behind him. "Found a gang rustling horses from the Double R Ranch. Sheriff's been looking for them for months." The sheriff emerged from his office, whistling low when he saw the captured men. "Galloway, you've outdone yourself." While the sheriff and his deputy took the prisoners inside, Hannah insisted on tending to Kent's wound. Back at the general store, she carefully cleaned the bullet graze on his upper arm. "It could have been much worse," she scolded, applying a bandage. "Worried about me?" Kent asked, a hint of teasing in his voice. Hannah concentrated on securing the bandage. "Should I not be?" Kent's hand covered hers, stilling her movements. "I missed you," he said quietly. Hannah's heart skipped. "Did you? More than I expected to." His eyes searched hers. "I'm not good at this, Hannah. My life isn't settled. I move around, take dangerous jobs. I didn't ask for explanations." "No, but you deserve them." Kent took a deep breath. "I came back for you, not just because I was passing through." Hannah felt warmth spread through her chest. "I'm glad." That evening, Kent joined the Prescotts and Hannah for dinner. The atmosphere was cheerful, with Howard regaling them with town gossip and Betsy fussing over Kent's injury. Hannah caught Kent watching her throughout the meal, his expression thoughtful. After dinner, Kent asked Hannah to walk with him. They strolled through the quiet streets as twilight settled over the town. "The Prescotts are good people," Kent said. "The best," Hannah agreed. "They've been very kind to me. And you're happy here, working in the store." Hannah considered the question. "I'm grateful for it, but I miss open spaces, growing things, the ranch life." Kent nodded. "I thought you might." He stopped walking, turning to face her. "There's a small place for sale outside town. Nothing fancy, 100 acres, small cabin, decent water. Been sitting empty since old man Jenkins passed last winter." Hannah looked at him quizzically. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I bought it this afternoon." Her eyes widened. "You? What? Why?" Kent took her hands in his. "Because I'm tired of wandering, Hannah. Been doing it too long. That night in the line shack, listening to you talk about your parents, how they balanced each other, loved each other, made me realize what I've been missing." Hannah's heart pounded so loudly she was certain he must hear it. "Kent, I'm not asking anything of you right now," he continued quickly. "Just telling you my plans. I'm going to try ranching, something small to start, and if someday you might consider." He trailed off, suddenly looking uncertain. Hannah squeezed his hands. "Are you attempting to court me, Kent Galloway?" A smile tugged at his mouth. "Attempting is the right word. I'm not very good at it. I think you're doing just fine." Hannah stepped closer. "I would very much like to see this ranch of yours." The kiss, when it came, was gentle, a question rather than a demand. Hannah answered by sliding her arms around his neck, drawing him closer. Over the following weeks, Kent divided his time between preparing the ranch and visiting Hannah in town. Howard teased them mercilessly, but gave his blessing when Kent formally asked to court Hannah. "Never seen a man so transformed," Howard commented to his wife as they watched Kent and Hannah through the store window, heads bent together in conversation. "Love's a powerful thing." By spring, Kent's small ranch was taking shape. He had a modest herd of cattle, a vegetable garden started, and had expanded the cabin with a new room. Hannah rode out often to help, finding joy in working alongside him, planning for the future. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the distant mountains, Kent took Hannah's hand. "I was thinking," he said, his voice casual though his grip betrayed his nervousness, "this place really needs a woman's touch." Hannah smiled. "Is that so, hum? "Specifically your touch." He turned to face her fully. "I love you, Hannah Blackburn. Have almost since that moment in the saloon when you stood there covered in ash but still proud as any queen." Tears filled Hannah's eyes. "I love you too. Then marry me, make this place our home." "Yes," she whispered. Yes, they were married in Cottonwood Springs' small church with the Prescotts standing as witnesses. Hannah wore a dress of blue silk that Betsy had ordered specially from Denver, and Kent looked uncommonly handsome in a new suit, though he tugged at the collar throughout the ceremony. As they exchanged vows, Hannah thought of her parents and how they would have approved of this steady, honorable man who had rescued her from her darkest moment and helped her build a new life from the ashes of the old. That night, in their cabin, now truly their home, Kent held her close. "Remember that night in Silver Creek?" he asked. "When I told everyone you were mine?" Hannah nodded against his chest. "I had no right to say it then," he murmured, "but I'm mighty glad it's true now." "As am I," Hannah replied, lifting her face for his kiss. "As am I." 1 year to the day after they first met, Hannah and Kent stood on their porch, watching as friends and neighbors gathered for a barn raising. The ranch had prospered beyond their expectations. Their cattle herd had doubled, the garden yielded bountifully, and the Prescotts had invested in their small enterprise, expanding their opportunities. "Who would have thought," Kent said, his arm around Hannah's waist, "that a chance encounter in a saloon would lead to all this?" Hannah leaned into him, her hand resting on the slight swell of her stomach where their first child grew. "I'm beginning to believe everything happens for a reason," she said. "Even sleeping in ashes," Kent chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Especially that. Without those ashes, I might never have found the courage to say those words." "She's mine," Hannah repeated softly. "And I'm yours," Kent answered. "Forever." As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Hannah thought of the journey that had brought her here, from devastation to joy, from loss to love. The road had been difficult, but standing beside the man who had claimed her in her darkest hour, she knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. In a land where survival often depended on grit and good fortune, Hannah and Kent had found something rarer still, a love born from kindness, strengthened through hardship, and destined to endure like the mountains that watched over their home.